Good afternoon, guys. My name is Beth Medina. I'm the CEO of the Innocent Justice Foundation, and we are here today to talk with some of our ICAC commanders about ways we can keep kids safe online. Just as a little background, the Innocent Justice Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to support Internet Crimes Against Children task force teams. We do that in a number of ways. We have a grant from the federal government to provide mental health and wellness support to Internet Crime Against Children task force teams and their affiliated agencies. So we try to provide support around how they can mitigate trauma response from the things that they view on a chronic basis and the effects of that on themselves, on their families, on their lives. And we've been doing that for about 10 years. We travel across the country and work closely with the commanders to provide support through training programs. The other thing we want to do is to educate the general population about the true nature and scope of crimes against children, and in hopes to help get the information out there to parents so that they can join law enforcement in becoming the first line of defense for the safety of kids in our communities. And it was for that reason that we wanted to come with you, to come in, have them talk to you today and get information out there about ICAC, the wonderful work they're doing. This is a very specialized group of experts. There's a lot of training that goes into not just law enforcement, but especially the task force and what they're doing as a way to rescue children and bring predators to justice. So we have some questions that we're going to have answered today by our commanders that are with us, and we have gotten some questions from folks who were interested, and so we'll be talking to them about that, and they're going to tell you from their perspective what it is they do on a daily basis and how their teams function, and then we hope to bring you more informative videos like this and offer opportunities for you to talk with these commanders. So first I would like to introduce Special Agent in Charge, Anthony Mays. He is from New Mexico, works for the Attorney General's office in New Mexico, and also ICAC Commander David Furtari from Ohio. He is the commander of the Ohio ICAC team. And just, I think I already said it, but just so, ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. Before I turn it over to them, I will tell you that ICAC was formed by an act of Congress in 1998. They were seeing an onslaught of horrific cases involving crimes against children that were coming across the internet. And so law enforcement agencies got together and worked with Congress to create the Internet Crimes Against Children task force teams. Across the country, there are 61 ICAC teams. Every state has at least one. Some states have more. They vary in how they are, in what area they are housed. As I said earlier, Anthony works for the Attorney General, and oftentimes ICAC teams are through the Attorney General's offices in the different states. Sometimes they're through the state police. Sometimes they're through local police departments. But so there's no one size fits all, and they're all trying to do a coordinated effort to keep our kids safe, and they do extraordinary work. So having sort of opened this up, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, Anthony and Dave, and maybe if you could just give us a little bit of background about your teams and talk about what you're seeing out there, and then we can go to some questions.
Okay.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Anthony Mays, as Beth mentioned. I've been in law enforcement for over 32 years, and what I've always noticed with law enforcement is that we don't always communicate great throughout the country, because we're within our state. So one of the things that I've noticed working in ICAC and I started developing the ICAC task force for the state of New Mexico back in 2008, is that law enforcement isn't fragmented when it really comes to working together nationally. So, so my task force actually in the state of New Mexico, and I actually oversee two task forces, one being the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and the second one is the Human Trafficking Task Force. My Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is made up of about 89 agencies, federal, state, local, and tribal, and also military. We have 3 military bases here in the state of New Mexico, and all 3 military bases are also part of the task force. And what that means is that all 89 agencies and the investigators within those agencies are trained the same way, and they follow the national ICAC standards that I presented to them, and the training that I present to them. And that's one of my missions each and every single day, is making sure that my folks throughout the state are trained on how to investigate both proactive and reactive cases where children are being exploited within our state. We an amazing team in our state. Actually, it's exciting because being such a rural state, I've seen some amazing work done by our folks, and those of you that are here in New Mexico, just so you know that law enforcement is here to make a difference, and we are here to track those predators down and provide and assist and find those children. Since the pandemic started, we've all been pretty much working remotely. Work has not stopped for at least, I guess we're going on about 5 weeks now. And we have seen an increase in cyber tips. I know I'm speaking with other commanders throughout the country. They've seen them as well. I'd say our cyber tips in our state, and when I say cyber tip, if a social media platform determines that a child is being exploited online under federal law, they must call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or file an online report, and then the National Center will notify the jurisdiction where that child is being exploited, and then we will get involved. So again, going back to New Mexico, our tips have doubled each month since the pandemic. Of course, because we know that children are home and going to school, but also bored and they have plenty of access to electronic devices. So we've seen an increase of tips that have come across through various social media platforms. Definitely a concern for us, but again, as you'll hear from my colleague David out of Ohio, that we continue doing business even if it's remotely. So even when we officially go back to the office, things will not change. We're going to continue running with the tips and educating the public and tracking down these predators.
You're absolutely right, Anthony. Thank you for that. Like Anthony, I've been in law enforcement 22 years now. I spent the last 14 years investigating internet crimes against children, first with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office in their Pittsburgh region, and then for the last 10 years, I've had the pleasure of working for the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office in Cleveland, Ohio. Unlike Anthony, where the grant in New Mexico is held by a state agency, here in the state of Ohio, the grant is held by the County Prosecutor's Office in Cleveland. And even though we're a small unit in Cleveland, really only about 10 to 15 personnel working these cases full time, we're supported throughout the state of Ohio with more than 360 law enforcement agencies underneath of the ICAC banner. So based on the number of affiliate agencies that we are the largest ICAC task force of the 61 that Beth originally mentioned. We do a lot of great work. Our folks do a lot of passionate work with regards to protecting children. Much like Anthony, much like New Mexico, we've seen a huge increase in the number of tips that we've received from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And that's been something that's been steadily increasing in the months prior to this pandemic. We've started to see more children and young adults come online. We've started to see newer apps, newer internet sites that have come online, all of whom are required to, as Anthony said, report those terms of service violations or criminal offenses to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And so working closely with the National Center, working closely with the other 60 ICACs that are spread throughout the country, we make a very formidable team in terms of going after these offenders, trying to end this problem of child exploitation on the internet. It's certainly good that we can work remotely during this time. We recognize that, these trying times require us to embrace new technology. However, we also recognize that our young children are embracing this technology as well. And in a lot of cases, they're not prepared, they're unfamiliar with the dangers. And it's important for us, not only as law enforcement, as criminal justice professionals, to go out and arrest these individuals and prosecute them, but also to educate the general public, parents, caregivers, children in general, to help themselves, protect themselves from some of the dangers that exist out there.
Thanks, guys. Maybe we could talk a little bit about during the course of your careers, what is maybe one or two of the biggest myths that you have come across around child exploitation?
Want to go first, Dave?
Yeah, when I got into this in 14 years ago now, the biggest thing we were dealing with at the time seemed to be a lot of exploitation that was occurring overseas. We were seeing a lot of files that were being trafficked that seemingly were created by, at the time what I was seeing was users overseas. And as we've embraced the technology, as the technology has become cheaper and more readily available to everybody, we're seeing the amount of imagery and videos that are being created that are just, increasing in staggering amounts, being created by anyone that has access to the technology. You have mobile devices now that all have cell phone cameras, all have cameras, all have the ability to create these images and videos. So, it's not just about adults exploiting children anymore. In a lot of cases, it's children who are endangering or exploiting themselves. Sometimes just because, as we've learned from some of the internet safety presentations that we've done, that's just what kids do these days. They've told us as much in the schools that we've gone into. Children don't see it the same way that we do in terms of what they're creating or the fact that they're victimizing themselves. And that's led to an increase in the images and videos that exist out there on the internet.
Yeah, that's one thing I agree with Dave. That's children don't understand that what they're producing, because we see, of course, the selfies and sending images back and forth, the sexting that's taking place, not understanding that those files are going to be they'll be on someone else's computer. They may send it to a friend or a group of friends, but usually that goes a lot further. And that's something that we've seen more and more of, unfortunately, especially now with children able to stay home. And that is true. I mean, one of the things that initially when I started doing this back in 2008, we thought, well, a lot of this is probably international. No, it's domestic. We're seeing it here in our country. The cases that we're seeing, for example, our tips have increased double during the pandemic. Those are all tips within the United States. I mean, the tips we've been looking at, they're just, we may have the victim here and the perpetrator in Ohio, which is why it's important that we all work together. We're all trained the same way, and we're able to communicate with each other. So when I call David up, which is really nice, and say, hey, we're looking at a predator in Ohio, can you help us out? I know exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to handle the investigation and what questions he's going to ask. And he knows, and his team will be able to provide my team the information they need to move forward in our jurisdiction. So one of the things that we've seen, and again, I'm real excited about that law enforcement in general works really well together. And it hasn't always been like that with law enforcement, but I've definitely seen that with us.
Yeah, and it's rare that we would, have a case that stays entirely within the boundaries of Ohio. And I think, as Anthony said, that's the beauty, that's the strength of this ICAC program, is that, when we have a situation, every single day we deal with situations where one of our parties in a case is out of state or in another country. We can reach out to another ICAC. We can reach out to one of our federal partners who has international connections, and we can move mountains when we need to find that information or get someone interviewed. I think back 15 years ago before ICAC, when I was involved in ICAC, and it would have taken me weeks to get the same information that I now get within usually a half hour to an hour. I think the other big myth that we're dealing with is that, these are victimless crimes. For years, we have tried to educate, our judges and our legislature and just the general population that, these are not just images and pictures or just images and videos. There are children who at one time were victimized, who were exploited. Every time these images and videos are shared or created, you have a victim that's portrayed on those images and videos. And, we want to try and keep that front and center with everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is very important to remember that behind every image, there is a child that is being tortured. So, the other thing I wanted to touch on just a little bit before we go to some questions is this concept of the cyber tips and what it is, how many you are all seeing. And I know we have talked about this many times with both you and both Anthony and Dave, and then with other commanders. And they across the board are saying that in the last month, they've seen like 190 to 200% increase in their cyber tips. But I want to put a number around that for people because I think that will kind of hit home for people what we're talking about, the number of cases that we are talking about in a given month. This is not a yearly number, this is in a given month. And so when Dave, when you were telling us 1,200 a month, that's for your task force to see, that's a lot of cases. So talk a little bit about maybe how you have seen those increase, because I know it's not just this anomaly of the time, this very specific special time with being in the pandemic response, but you touched upon it a little bit, Dave, how the numbers have been growing year after year after year. So if you would talk a little bit about the increase in numbers that you've been seeing.
Yeah, when I joined the ICAC program in Ohio in 2009, we received 649 cyber tips for the entire year in the first year that I was a part of ICAC. We get 649 tips a month. Throughout most of 2019, that was our average. It was about 600 to 700 cyber tips a month. In March of this year, and then again this month in April, for the first time since I've been a part of ICAC, we crested 1,000 cyber tips in a month. And, certainly that has to do with the fact that companies are better at reporting than they used to be. As you touched on, ICAC was created by a congressional mandate. There's also a mandate that companies have to report these instances to the National Center, which I think is a great thing. And we're seeing more companies do that. We're seeing some of the smaller social networking sites, the internet service providers, they're doing a great job of reporting. But you're also seeing more and more offenders using traditional social media now than we ever have. And you're certainly starting to see more and more children. In some cases, we're seeing kids as young as 7 and 8 years old who have tips that are being reported to us by companies like Google and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, we as parents need to do a better job about saying no to our children. You know, when our 8-year-old says, I want to have a YouTube channel, we need to understand the dangers of what's out there on YouTube. All right. It's not just a video sharing platform. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of offenders who recognize that kids are using YouTube for their content, that are potentially posting videos. The fact that we are a society now of, you know, people who like to go live, whether that's on Facebook or on YouTube or on any of these other platforms, you know, really means we have to pay more attention to what we're putting out there. And I think that's what's driving the increase in cyber tips, is that, you know, people, kids in general, are not really thinking about what they're putting out there, what they're posting, what they're sharing. And these offenders are taking advantage of that. So I'd like to believe that our numbers will decrease as we come out of this pandemic. However, I think we're just going to continue to see an increase because we're always going to see new social media. We're always going to see new internet sites. The next latest and greatest thing that kids have to have. And we're going to see kids younger and younger start to adapt to these devices, especially around the fact that we're spending more time at home. Kids want to feel more connected. I have a fear that we're going to see more younger kids jumping on technology so that they can stay connected while they're at home.
Yeah, Beth, that's a good question. So for a state of 2 million people in New Mexico, I mean, we're a large state geographically, you know, with being the 5th largest state, but there's only 2 million people here, and it's a rural state. And I've seen our tips have doubled, and I know it's not quite the numbers that Dave sees, but we saw 200 tips for last month alone. That's a lot for New Mexico. Just to give you a broader picture, though, just the National Center reported that between April 12th and April 18th, and again, this is the time we're going into the pandemic, just child pornography tips alone, they had 1,092,897. So that's a lot. So over 1 million tips. Considering if you're looking at around the same time period in March 15th, around that time, they had 295,000 tips reported during a 1-week period. So that goes to show us that our country, that our children are staying home. They're definitely on the internet more. And as Dave mentioned, we're going to definitely start seeing the younger generation. And what's happening now? When the pandemic started, some of the school systems, the elementary schools, they said, okay, we're going to get Chromebooks out to everyone. So every child is going to have a laptop that that'll be accessible to them. The internet service providers, especially within our state, are offering free Wi-Fi for underprivileged families, or a discounted Wi-Fi, discounted services. So the accessibility is there. They don't have to come from a family where they're given a phone at the age of 8. The schools are providing that now so they can start educating them. And as we see this pandemic to go on, I mean, again, the tips are going up quite a bit, and definitely a concern. And then Dave's right that some new apps are coming out all the time. So what's the newest app that we have some concerns with? Is TikTok. We have children going on there producing videos, nude images, and then they're able to communicate through this app as well. Now, this particular app is based out of China, and under federal law, if they're doing business in the United States, they must report to the National Center if a child's being exploited on their app. We know there are a lot more taking place. Now, they're reporting it through Interpol, and it goes through Europe, of course, and then it goes to the National Center, and then eventually, if it comes into our jurisdiction here in the United States, we're going to see that. But the tips are increasing. That's the newest and greatest app. However, last night, I did see there was a group of moms on there doing a lot of TikTok videos, and like with Facebook, the older folks are taking over again. So maybe we'll see that app go to the wayside, and we'll see another new app come up. But yeah, so it's constant. I mean, I was talking to my daughter the other night. She's 14. I said, well, do you use Facebook anymore? And she goes, oh, no, that's for old people. She goes, they don't do that anymore. And I go, well, TikTok's getting there too. And she goes, oh, we use Instagram, Snapchat, and just to name a few. And then she explained to me each age group and what they would be doing on there and so on. So I think it's really important to talk to your children and definitely and find out what they're doing, be involved and be engaged in their lives, and then find out what apps are they using and what's out there. And just,
Are there,
pardon me,
sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to ask you to kind of break that down a little bit more. Can you give us some of the apps that you all feel are trending, that are some of the least secure apps for kids to be using, and then how parents can know what is happening other than just talking to their child? Because if your children might say, well, I'm not going to tell mom and dad everything about what I do, especially once they're a teenager.
Right.
So maybe if you can talk a little bit about what are some of the biggest concerns that you have as far as apps go, and then how parents can best help to know, like how can we know as parents?
Well, I think, so one of the apps that, of course, Discord is one of those gaming apps. And, again, your children can be exploited on Discord. I mean, it's a gaming app, but, of course, older or adults can be on there as well with your children if they're playing a game. But there are several apps out there that our teens use, and even younger. One is I mentioned is TikTok. I mean, it's a very popular app. And if you ever get the opportunity to actually check the app out, basically every other video is a child standing in front of a camera doing something. And we're seeing an increase of nudes with that. And then, of course, Snapchat's been around for a while. And again, that's children are using that to take selfies and then send them out to each other. And again, they can be exploited on there as well. Instagram. Videos, images, those kind of things are being shared. My daughter was mentioning we looked into, we don't get a lot of it on Twitter, but Twitter is another app that can be used for exploitation as well. Now, I get that question all the time, and I'm sure David does as well. Where can we go to learn about these apps? I mean, you're right. Some of us can't talk to our 14-year-old about them. One of the places that we've vetted, and I actually chair education and outreach nationally. I'm a co-chair for our committee for ICAC. So we vet sites all the time to see what are some of the better sites that are out there that we can share with the public. Common Sense Media is one of those sites. We've been very impressed with them. They definitely have a lot of resources that are available to parents. In Common Sense Media, you can actually go into one of the tabs, you can look at apps, and it explains to you what TikTok is, how it's used, and then there's a tutorial on that as well. And that includes all the most popular apps that are out there that our children are using. So I always recommend to parents is go on Common Sense Media, and there are several other sites out there that you can find this information. But Common Sense Media seems to be one of the nonstop, one-stop shop places that you can find a lot of information about the newest apps and how they're used.
Yeah, we do more than 240 internet safety presentations throughout Ohio every single year, and by far and away, what gets most parents in the door is their desire to learn more about the dangers of the internet. And I think what's concerning about that to us is that, I would love to stand up in front of a room of parents and tell them all of the dark corners of the internet, places not to let your kids go hang out, apps not to let them use. The reality, however, is that, our top 14 apps that we tell parents to watch out for are the most popular apps that exist out there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. Some of them have very good privacy settings, very good ways or things that you can do as a child or a parent to make sure your children are protected. However, all of those safety measures are out the window the minute a child friends one complete stranger, or shares too much information, or creates an image or video that depicts them wearing a shirt of their school, or that provides some piece of personal information, you know, it's problematic in that regard that, you know, parents are looking for like the danger places, and they find out that it's the same apps that they're using as parents, or that their kids are using right in front of them because little Johnny has said, you know, this is what everyone in school is using, or this is the latest and greatest. What I also find frustrating from time to time is, you know, parents say, number one, I don't want anything to do with Instagram. I won't create my own Snapchat account. You know, if you're a parent that has decided that you're going to allow your child to have Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, you should have those apps as well. You should understand what they do. You should use them. You know, if you spend any time in the iTunes store or the Google Play store, you can learn what these apps do, the permissions that they require, the settings that are there to protect kids. I mean, they all have ratings. You know, why is a certain app rated one way and not another? What are the things that the manufacturers or the developers don't want you to, you know, be exposed to? So spend a little time as a parent doing some research. You know, you can Google the description of the icon. You can Google the name of the app. You're going to find a lot of information on why it's good or why it's, you know, why it's a problem for children. And I don't think parents spend enough time, you know, getting to know what's really on their child's device. You know, I mean, their children are in their house. They see them in their bedroom. They think, well, they're safe. But who are they talking to?
Right.
Who are they interacting with? What are they sharing? Is it detrimental to not only your child's safety, but also the safety for, you know, the rest of the family members?
Right. With a lot of the schools going online, have there been many instances that you all are hearing of school-related accounts being hacked or children being reached through them in ways that maybe we were not aware that could happen? Um, you know, something that parents might not even think of as something that would be a possibly dangerous um, connection to their kid?
I don't know if I would say it's so much the hacking. There obviously are, as Anthony said, a lot of districts that are providing the Chromebooks, the technology, the ability to connect wirelessly from home to, you know, to do work from home. We deal with some tech companies that have dashboards into the schools, some platforms where they can monitor some of that activity that's going on. And from time to time, we do see students using their school accounts, their school emails, doing things they shouldn't. Obviously, those are very easy cases for us to investigate because typically there is a school district email address that is tied to that activity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of getting in touch with the local police, sending out a school resource officer. But I think kids are smarter in terms of knowing that instead of using their school issued device, they're going to probably use, you know, the phone they have, the tablet at home, the computer at home, because schools are usually pretty good about locking down some of the social networking sites, some of the more popular apps that are out there, because they know kids are going to abuse them if given the opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting actually when with this the first week that this took place, well actually the second week when the schools decided to try to find another way of working with students and again sending the Chromebooks out. A lot of the schools, one being here in New Mexico, decided to do a Zoom class, and during the Zoom class it was bombed, basically what they call it, Zoom bombing or some term. But yeah, someone came online and actually exposed themselves to a classroom full of children, and so there was definitely some concerns at the beginning that with using the various apps that are out there. I think they're getting better. I know initially people weren't sure how to encrypt that or protect their classes, but I know they're getting better with that. But that has happened. You know, that we had a couple of cases like that. And they're fairly easy to track down too. I mean, good records are kept by most of these companies that offer those types of services, so that's not a I mean, we definitely were able to find out who actually did that, but it's something that's going to occur. And as Dave mentioned, it's, children, again, they understand that they're being monitored. My daughter even said something that she goes, yeah, I have Gmail and they can know everything I'm doing on Gmail. I go, yeah, that's true. And they know everything you're doing on your computer as well. So, and she said, yeah, she goes, I would never do anything bad, Dad. But, everyone knows that they gave us a computer and we can't go anywhere other than doing schoolwork with it. So, children are going to test their boundaries and they're going to look other places. So we have to just be aware of that and be involved.
And I think that, our rush to embrace streaming services like Zoom or Facebook Live during this pandemic, I think that illustrates the problem that we see as ICAC task force, that when new technology comes out, the minute kids find out about it, they rush to it. They don't necessarily educate themselves about it. When Facebook started becoming the old people platform and kids rushed to Instagram, a lot of tips started coming in from Instagram. And then vice versa, we moved to another platform, and then Snapchat became the next big thing. So, kids rush to it, and the online offenders, the predators, they rush right behind the kids because they know that's where the kids are at. Anthony mentioned Discord. A lot of the gaming platforms, we're constantly telling kids, or parents for that matter, don't overlook the gaming platforms. Okay, just because your child is at home on their Xbox or their PlayStation, it's a lot different than it was when we were playing video games in our house. It's an online multiplayer environment. There's a keyboard, there's a webcam, there's a headset. My kids don't play video games by themselves anymore. They play them with hundreds of other players around the world, and those players may or may not be potential offenders.
So that's a really good point, and I think that we get a lot of questions about that, the online gaming, and how can parents monitor what is happening there as far as who they're playing games with, and if a player that they're playing with is someone who's looking to do them harm. How can a parent even begin to monitor that?
I think it's a little tougher with video games, but I think it all comes back to the same philosophy that, we're going to sit down and have conversations with our kids. Just because they're using a mobile device, a tablet, a video game system, doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't sit down once a week and ask them, who are you playing with? Who are you talking to? Who are these people that are on your friends list or that you follow or that you subscribe to? Most of the parents we talk to, they have purchased these devices for their children. I don't know many children who go out and spend $1,000 on the latest and greatest iPhone and pay for the mobile data plan. So, I tell parents, listen, it's your device, okay? Your child lives in your house. You need to set some rules. You need to have some boundaries. If it means taking the device every night and going through it, that's really what you need to do to see who they're talking to and who they're communicating with. Maybe it means playing games with. You think of some of the more simpler games out there, Words with Friends. You can chat with people while you're playing that game. We've seen some small tips that have come in where a child has been exploited or enticed while playing that game simply verbally. Are these offenders trying to get these children away from a game like Words with Friends by saying, hey, what's your Instagram screen name? Or where do you hang out on Snapchat? We could talk there later. You can't discount the fact that, victimization or exploitation can occur on any platform where there is the ability to communicate with another user. And when you think of it that way, that covers almost every single app and internet site that exists out there in the world today.
Yeah. I've personally seen that in and among my community of friends and family is that oftentimes the way that a predator gets in, it's kind of innocuous, and then it's almost like when they used to tell us when we were younger, never leave the party that you went to with your friends with somebody alone. Like, just don't leave a party with someone that you don't know well, because it seems like that is what happens. They're on a platform, whatever that platform might be, and then almost immediately they want to move them to another platform. They will invite the child to come to let's go to this other chat room where we can talk, or let's, they want to move them from where they are. So I've found that that's an interesting way to kind of recognize that, hey, and I've talked about that with my son. If there are people who are inviting you to go somewhere else, maybe that's one of the bells that needs to go off. Why do you need to talk to me somewhere other than, on Fortnite here?
Well, and
Now,
like thinking of Fortnite or thinking of I think of Minecraft all the time, with
right.
its innocent looking little characters and the fact that you can wander around this virtual environment and build fun looking things. We're asking kids all the time, who is it behind that Minecraft character? Who is it on the other side of that computer screen? And that's really what gets them thinking about, I really don't know the person like I thought I did. Because, you can be anybody you want to be on the internet, especially when you're hiding behind a video game character. And I think kids look at those characters and they think, well, this person plays the same games I do. I'm not as concerned as I would be. It's not necessarily a stranger like my parents would be talking about. But then more often than not, those kids end up starting a communication or a conversation with those gamers, and they find out that they're obviously not who they say they are.
Yeah.
Something on that though, and not endorsing any particular app that's out there, but there's a lot of good apps for parents to look at. One of the apps that I recently have tried, and again, as Dave mentioned, it's important as parents, as educators, that, we try every app that's out there. We look at it and see how they work, so we know what to look for. But one of the apps that I've liked so far is an app called Bark, and actually it monitors YouTube, emails, different internet sites, social networking sites that the child might go to, and then it actually alerts you as potential safety concerns. And again, I'm not endorsing Bark in any way, but it's just one of many. And I'm going to try this other app that just came out. I'll try a new one within the next couple of weeks. Again, it gives a parent a peace of mind, the kind of understanding what your child's doing. So if they are on a social networking site, you know what they're on. Unfortunately, a lot of these apps do, there's a cost associated with them. And sometimes it's just easier to say, let me look at your phone and see where you've been and understand that. And again, you can get that knowledge from various sites. As David mentioned, you can actually Google various apps and figure out how they work. And again, Common Sense Media has some things too, if you don't want to pay for it. But there are plenty of apps out there that parents can use that helps them monitor where their children are going.
Is there anything, because I know we're going to be wrapping up here, is there anything that I've missed so far that you think would be something that parents need to know? I mean, I know we could continue to talk about this for hours, but is there a pressing piece that you think parents should really know from watching this, a parent or a guardian, an aunt or an uncle, or, anyone who cares about the kids in their life and keeping them safe?
I would just say that, now's the perfect time to really spend time talking to your child, your grandchild, about the topic of internet safety, about the dangers that exist out there. I mean, we have more time, we as a family have had more time to, have family dinners or sit around the family room and talk about everything that's been going on. So, most parents talk about, I don't have the time to really invest in, learning what my kids are doing online. I'm just trying to make sure they're safe in the real world. This is the perfect time to have those conversations, to really spend and learn about, especially in light of everything we're doing with streaming and working remotely and kids online for school. Parents should educate themselves. And that to me is the biggest thing that, that parents can do if they're going to continue to allow their children to, travel this information superhighway.
Yeah, I agree. Being involved in your child's life is important, and modeling that good behavior too. I mean, we've all seen it where you go to a restaurant and you see a family at a table and all of them are looking at their devices and not really engaging each other. And that's all part of that. And it's easy for us to continue to do that even at home. So it's important we break away from that and actually be more involved in our children's lives. And then if you're more involved in their lives, you're going to see those indicators when maybe they are communicating with someone that's grooming them or someone that's trying to extort them in some way. And you'll know your child well enough where you'll see those indicators and you'll see the change in behavior and you'll see how they're being closed off. You'll see that if they're taking their device to the restroom with them or they're doing things, they're hiding in a closet or something because they're trying to communicate with this person. So look for those indicators. And that's really important. I mean, getting involved, staying involved, and then asking those indicators. It's hard. I mean, I'm working from home, and I try to make it a point at least every hour, hour and a half that I get up and I away from my computer and I stretch my legs by checking on my children, you know, and my and just checking in and seeing how they're doing and ask if they need help with their homework or if I can provide any kind of guidance because we just need to be involved and that's important. Um, just wanted to throw a couple things out there. I mentioned a couple of sites already. Of course, there's other sites you can go to, the ICAC Task Force Programs website. That's ICAC, ICAC.org. There is a tab there where you can actually download. You don't have to be an ICAC Task Force member or an affiliate. Anyone can go there and actually look for um, um, safety presentations and just videos and things like that you can actually watch. Great PSAs are on there as well, and that's open to the public. Also, if you want to know what commander is within your state, you can find that information there as well. You can find their information as far as their email address and then, you know, where the commander is located. So uh, that's a great place to start. Net Smarts is through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have an amazing program. Again, a lot of great information for parents, educators, guardians, anyone that wants to understand how to better work with children, communicate better, and just be aware of what's going on out there. And then reporting resources, again, going back to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the cybertipline.org. You can go online and just report if you feel that a child was being exploited somehow. And then again, they will get the tip. They have analysts that will actually look at the tip. And then if they will determine what part of the country the tip should be sent to. And then a commander will receive that tip and then make a determination how we're going to work and how we're going to be able to better assist the person that may be getting exploited. Think about the childhelp.org. It's a child abuse hotline. I spoke with some folks from Children's and Family Department last week, and they have seen an increase in child abuse cases because of children being home. As much as we would not like to believe this, but many of our children are home with someone that may be abusing them, and some of these children are contacting their teachers and saying, hey, I need help. So there's the childhelp.org hotline. There's also the suicide prevention lifeline.org. Again, a great place to go. And all these sites that I've mentioned so far, they can text, they can email, or they can call directly and receive the help that they need. And then finally, there's the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Again, if you just put that in Google and that'll come right up. Great resources that are out there to help because there's folks out there.
We'll post all those. We will put links to those resources on our Facebook page. So folks who are listening to this will have that available to them.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really just want to thank you guys for coming on today and taking time out to talk with us. I know this will generate even more questions, and hopefully you'll come back and join us. We're going to be bringing on other commanders to talk about and answer some of the questions. So we'll talk about the topic even more and answer some questions from the general public as it comes in. Our next edition of this, or another edition of this session, will happen Monday, the 4th of May. So next Monday, and it'll be at 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific time. Hopefully we will get the live stream working properly. And so it'll be live for folks. But thank you so much for all the work you do. It has been an absolute privilege for me to work with all of you. And I just know what your heart is, and I know that you care so much for the safety of children, and this is a mission for everyone in ICAC. It's not a job, it's a mission, and I am so grateful for all of the work you do, and I just couldn't say it enough. So thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you soon. And those of you who listen to this, if you have any questions or comments, please get in touch with us, either on the Facebook page there. You can contact us at info@innocentjustice.org. And we are going to do a thank you campaign on the 5th of May. It is going to be Giving Tuesday now. And we would like to ask you to thank an ICAC team. So if we have a Facebook profile image that you can use to just say thank you to all the heroes in ICAC, and let them know that you appreciate the work that they're doing. So again, just like us on Facebook, and you can find out more information about the work we do and what we're doing to help support ICAC. And you can also join us by supporting them as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.